Fire and Silver, written by Wes Valor, narrated by Luke Walrath. Chapter 2. Prince Victor walked down the main hallway, the polished ivory and beige marble floors carrying a faint scent of fresh paint. Though pristine, the corridor felt lifeless. Flickering sconces cast long shadows over urns and vases perched on marble pedestals, their colors dulled in the dim light. His soft footsteps echoed, the only sound in the heavy silence. As he neared the morgue, faint sobbing reached his ears, his mother's anguished cries cutting through the quiet and deepening his own sorrow. He paused at the wooden door, took a steadying breath, and braced himself. "Stay strong," he whispered. "A calm mind brings strength." He wiped his tears away. In moments like this, strength wasn't a luxury. It was the only choice. With another breath and a quiet prayer, Victor squared his shoulders and opened the door to face his mother. Fluorescent lights bathed the morgue in a harsh glow, casting long shadows over rows of metal autopsy tables. The stench of death clung to the air, despite the deodorizers. Beside one table stood the coroner, silent. Queen Bernice wept openly, hunched over the pale, lifeless body of Prince Malcolm. The coroner looked up warily as Victor entered, sorrow etched in his features. With a respectful nod, he stepped aside. Prince Malcolm lay on the table, his chest stitched where the Sonja beast had torn into him. Queen Bernice stood nearby, eyes red and swollen from crying. As Victor approached, she pulled him into a tight embrace. "Thank you, Victory. You're a good brother," she sobbed. Victor held her trembling frame, blinking back tears. He hadn't been able to save Malcolm, and the weight of that failure pressed heavily on his chest. All he could do now was stand beside her, offering the only thing left: comfort. Clinging to each other, they shared the burden of grief. The next day, Prince Victor wandered the palace halls in a daze, tears streaking his face. Clad only in his robe, he walked barefoot, letting his feet guide him, his mind lost in grief. Banners and tapestries blurred past, their vibrant colors dulled by sorrow. Every step echoed with memories of Malcolm. Childhood races, shared laughter, quiet talks about first crushes, every memory a fresh wound. Malcolm had only been 18, slaughtered like a lamb to wolves. Grief tightening in his chest, Victor returned to his brother's room. The door creaked open to silence. Sheet music still lay scattered across the desk, unfinished compositions that would never be completed. Victor collapsed onto the bed, burying his face in the pillow and breathing in his brother's fading scent, a scent that was already becoming memory. Rising, Victor crossed to the grand piano, its polished wood cloaked in dust. He brushed his fingers over the keys, releasing soft, mournful notes into the silence. Malcolm's guitar rested on a nearby gray sofa, the neck still imprinted with the shape of his grip. Victor picked it up gently, strumming a few familiar chords. Each note carried his brother's spirit, deepening the ache in his chest. As the melody flowed, Victor drifted into a vivid memory of their youth. He saw his 14-year-old self in his royal quarters, sunlight pouring through tall windows. Across from him sat Malcolm, both boys cradling guitars. Victor patiently guided his younger brother, demonstrating chords, plucking strings, correcting finger positions with quiet encouragement. Bookshelves lined the walls behind them, filled with leather-bound volumes in Sorbo and Leo speech. Victor, an avid reader, had once taught himself Sorbo just to impress a human girl. She'd rejected him, but the knowledge had endured. Now 24, he'd read nearly 100 books from both human and elven minds. But in that moment, none of it mattered. He was simply grateful to share music with his little brother, watching Malcolm's face scrunch with focus, determined to get each note just right. One stormy night, rain lashed the windows and wind howled through the panes. Lightning lit up the silk tapestries before darkness reclaimed the room. Victor, 14, no longer feared the storms, but 8-year-old Malcolm did. Victor pictured him across the hall, likely curled beneath his blanket, hands over his ears. Another thunderclap shook the glass. Victor knew what came next. To Malcolm, his older brother was fearless. So Victor masked his own unease, ready to be the anchor his sibling needed. Right on cue, a timid knock sounded at the chamber door. "Come in," Victor called gently, pushing back his indigo covers. Malcolm stood in the doorway, blanket in tow. "The storm woke me," he whispered. Victor offered a sympathetic smile and patted the bed. Malcolm climbed in and curled beside him, flinching with every thunderclap. "It's all right. The storm can't hurt you," Victor soothed, wrapping an arm around him. To calm him, Victor retrieved his guitar and strummed a soft lullaby. As the gentle melody rose above the storm, Malcolm's breathing slowed. Sleep took him, safe in his brother's arms. Victor stayed awake, keeping watch as the storm raged on. As the memory faded, so did his desire to play. Victor set the guitar aside, a sudden urge pulling him away from the palace. He needed a drink. He left quietly, pulling the door shut behind him. Leaving the Onyx Palace, Prince Victor stepped into a downtown tavern where the scent of smoked wood and ale filled the air. Dressed in casual clothes with a hood pulled low to hide his face, he preferred to avoid the attention that came with being a local royal celebrity. "I certainly don't need the headache," Victor thought. In the back corner, an upright piano sat bathed in the warm glow of wall sconces. A slender man in a white shirt and suspenders played a jaunty tune, his fingers dancing across the keys. He swayed on the bench, eyes closing now and then as he lost himself in the music. His passion was infectious. Patrons clapped and cheered with every lively shift in melody. Watching him stirred something deep in Victor, almost bringing him to tears as he imagined Malcolm at the piano instead. "That should be you, not him. You should be alive, brother, playing like there's no tomorrow," Victor thought. The bar's heavy oak door creaked open periodically, letting in bursts of cold autumn air that swept through the warm tavern. Prince Victor clapped a hand on his friend's broad shoulder. "Good to see you, my friend." He slid into the creaky bar stool beside Officer Benjamin Lewis, a dwarven pyromancer with the Onyx Knights. "Likewise," Ben said. He wore a casual brown suit and tie. "It's a bit chilly. Why'd you choose the seat by the door?" Victor asked. "The place is overflowing. Do you see any other seats open?" Victor glanced around. Ben was right. The bar was packed with patrons. "I could always take this hood off and tell everyone to leave," Victor whispered with a smirk. "I am the High Elven Prince." "That would be unkind of you," Ben replied, his bushy brows furrowing with concern. "I'm sorry about Malcolm. How are you holding up?" Victor sighed, his fingers tracing the worn rings in the oak countertop. "Yesterday was one of the hardest days I've ever had. I miss him terribly, Ben." Ben turned to the bartender. "Another round of vodka, and one for my friend." The bartender, a tall, barrel-chested man with a curled mustache, nodded. He wore a white shirt with sleeve garters, a black vest, and a long apron tied at the waist. Victor managed to smile. "You know me too well." "Outside of Aaliyah, who else really does?" Ben said. Though shorter than the other knights, Benjamin more than made up for it with his power. As a skilled pyromancer, he could create, shape, and command fire with ease. His signature attack, Meteors of Heaven, summoned massive orbs of flame from the sky, a devastating force Victor had witnessed firsthand on the battlefield against creatures of the night. Benjamin grinned wide, raising his mug with a cheerful spark still dancing in his eyes, even after all these years. Despite his new role as an officer, the fiery spirit that had made him one of Victor's closest companions since their cadet days hadn't faded, and for that, the prince was deeply grateful. It doesn't matter how small he is. He's one of the most powerful mages out there, Victor thought. He took a sip of the richly hued red drink, and a wide grin spread across his face. The vibrant strawberry flavor made his eyes widen with delight. He licked his lips, savoring the taste as he finished the last drop. Setting down the empty glass with a satisfied sigh, Victor beamed, delighted by the unexpected discovery. "It tastes amazing," Victor said, brows furrowed in surprise. "But vodka's usually clear, not red." "It's called the Red Unicorn," the bartender replied with a grin. "Popular up in the Sapphire Kingdom. Took a trip north, fell in love with the bloody thing. Now I serve it here in the capital." Victor chuckled. "That's a ridiculous name for a drink." The bartender shrugged. "Hey, I just pour it. I don't name it." Still smiling from the discovery, Victor glanced around the bustling bar with renewed interest. All around him, patrons were sipping the same distinctive red drink. A group of friends laughed and toasted their vibrant cocktails. Nearby, a man and woman shared the crimson elixir, their faces glowing with satisfaction. Up at the bar, people lined up for refills as the bartender slid freshly mixed glasses down the counter with practiced ease. "I'd say you made the right choice," Victor said, nodding at the crowd. "Your business is booming." "Ever been to the Sapphire Kingdom?" the bartender asked. Victor downed the last of his drink and set the glass down again. "Once or twice, back when I was a kid." A warm memory of Malcolm surfaced, tugging gently at his thoughts. He smiled to himself, picturing 6-year-old Malcolm. So small, so wide-eyed. He was like a puppy back then, Victor thought. So innocent. Years ago, when Victor was 12 and Malcolm just 6, Queen Bernice brought them to the wintry Sapphire Kingdom at King Blair's invitation. As their carriage climbed the snowy hill, Victor gazed in awe at the Gothic estate. Gray stone turrets, slate spires, and stained glass windows rising from frosted walls wrapped in creeping vines. Inside the portcullis, snow blanketed the courtyards and rooftops, icicles lined the eaves, and distant hills rolled like sugared confections under crisp winter skies. When the carriage stopped, Malcolm leapt into the snow, laughing as he twirled and tried to catch flakes on his tongue. Victor smiled. In that moment, his brother's joy was the true magic of winter. As quickly as it came, the memory dissolved, returning Victor to the lively chatter of the tavern. But Malcolm's youthful grin still lingered in his mind. "Remember that trip to Sapphire I told you about, when Malcolm first saw snow?" Victor asked, turning to Ben beside him. Ben chuckled before sipping his vodka. "How could I forget? From your stories, that boy's eyes lit up brighter than a winter solstice tree when he woke up to the flurries." "He begged me to take him sledding," Victor recalled with a smile. "Could barely stand still long enough for me to get our coats on." "Aye, and you said he made you drag that oaken sled up and down the hill hundreds of times," Ben replied. "My legs were jelly by dusk, but he still cried for one more turn each time," Victor said with a wistful laugh. I can still hear his voice. "Again, Victor! Again!" Ben clasped Victor's shoulder, seeing his glistening eyes. "From your stories, he seemed like a good kid." Victor bid the bartender and his friend Ben a good evening, patting Ben heartily on the back before leaving the warmth of the bar. Stepping outside, Victor headed down the gas lamp-lit streets toward the palace, leaves swirling around him in the autumn breeze. The air carried notes of cinnamon and apple spice, evoking memories of evenings with Aaliyah. He pictured her raven hair and the way she favored dresses in autumnal tones that brought out her mesmerizing eyes, one emerald green and the other a deep, earthy brown. Aaliyah's eyes sparkled like jewels, yet held a quiet wisdom beneath their brilliance. Victor imagined her strolling through the maple-lined palace gardens, the falling leaves mirroring the russets and burgundies of her flowing gowns. She cherished beauty in all its fleeting forms. Like the changing autumn leaves, her spirit was ever shifting, vibrant, graceful, and alive. Thoughts of her warmed Victor as he quickened his pace along the gaslit cobblestone streets toward the palace. Its illuminated towers acted as beacons, guiding him home to Aaliyah, who was currently his guest.